The helicopter's blades were still chopping through the air when I dropped down onto the hard frozen ground. My duffel landed beside me with a dull thump, the sound echoing off the surrounding peaks like a warning shot. Northern Alaska in October wasn't just cold, it was a brutal, bone-deep chill that crept through your gloves and made your jaw clench on instinct. I hauled my gear up and jogged away from the rotor wash. Shoulders hunched against the icy wind, the chopper kicked back at me. The pilot flashed me a quick thumbs up from behind the glass. And a moment later the aircraft climbed skyward, leaving me alone in front of what would pass as home for the next half year. The outpost looked exactly like the photos. A handful of prefab modules clustered inside a chain-link perimeter. The 12-foot fence crowned with curling razor wire that glittered faintly in the gray light. A pair of radio towers stabbed into the overcast sky, their red beacons pulsing like slow heartbeats. Outside the fence, the world simply ended. Wilderness stretched out in every direction, endless and ancient. Dense stands of spruce and pine crowded the horizon, dark and timeless reeds that looked as though they had been waiting here long before any of us existed. Thompson, I turned toward the voice. See a man walking toward me from the main building. Tall, straight-backed, with a kind of weathered face that made guessing his age impossible. His uniform was crisp, even in this wind. Name tape reading Samuels. Yes, Sergeant. I straightened up, adjusting me grip on my duffel. Welcome to the ass end of nowhere. Head and smile. Follow me. We walked through the compound in silence. I counted from main buildings, barracks, command center, equipment shed, and what looked like a small mess hall. Everything was functional, utilitarian. Gray metal siding, small windows, heavy doors. A few other soldiers moved between buildings, but not many. Debriefing had mentioned a skeleton crew of 12. Samuels led me into the command building, down a narrow hallway to a small office. Maps covered the walls, topographical surveys of the surrounding area, radio frequency charts, weather patterns. He sat behind a metal desk and pulled out a drawer. Before we get you settled, there's something you need to see. He withdrew a piece of paper. Not official military, stationary, just a regular sheet with handwriting on it. He slid it across the desk to me. I picked it up and read, Rules for Guard Duty and General Conduct. 1. Do not respond to voices calling from outside the fence after dark, no matter who they claim to be. 2. Do not allow anyone inside the perimeter who arrives on foot. No exceptions. 3. If you encounter a dog that speaks, do not acknowledge it. Continue with your duties. 4. Lock your door before midnight. Do not open it for any reason until dawn. 5. If you hear screaming in the night, do not investigate. Radio for backup and remain at your post. He read it twice, then looked up at Samuels. His expression hadn't changed, still that flat, unreadable stare. Is this some kind of initiation thing? Yes. Those are standing orders for this outpost. Come on, Sarge. Talking dogs. Voices in the night. I set the paper back on theta. Look, I get it. New guy shows up. You want to mess with him, hello? That's fine. But pick up the paper, Thompson. His voice had an edge to it now. Not angry exactly, but something harder. I picked it up again. You will memorize those rules. You will follow them. No exceptions. No questions. Is that clear? Yeah, but is that clear, soldier? I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Yes, Sergeant. Cuv Martinez will show you to your quarters. You've got the midnight shift on Tower 2 tonight. Get some rest. He turned back to his paperwork, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to crack a smile or give me some sign. This was all a joke. Nothing. Josie Martinez turned out to be a thin guy about my age, with tired eyes and a cross pendant visible at his collar. He helped me carry my gear to the barracks, a long, narrow building divided into individual rooms. This is you, Hesed, opening a door near the end of the hall. Not much, but it's private. Their room was maybe 8 by 10 feet. Single bed, footlocker, small desk, even smell a closeout. A tiny window looked out at the fence and the forest beyond. Thanks. I dropped my duffel on the bed. Hey, what's the deal with those rules Samuels gave me? Jose paused in the doorway. He gave you the list. Yeah, come on, man. Talking dogs. It's a joke, right? He looked at me for a long time and I saw something in his expression I couldn't quite figure out. Pity, maybe, or worry. Just follow them, he said quietly. Trust me on that. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in my new room. I unpacked slowly, hanging my uniforms in the closet, arranging my personal items on the desk. The rules sat folded in my pocket, and I found myself pulling him out to read again. The whole thing was ridiculous. I'd been stationed at bases all over Germany, South Korea, Fort Hood. Every place had its traditions, its ways of breaking in. The new guys. This was just more elaborate than most. I tried to nap before my shift, but sleep wouldn't come. The wind howled outside, making the walls creak. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Normal sounds, but in this place, they seemed louder, more threatening. At 23:45 hours, I made my way to Tower 2. The previous guard, a kid who barely looked old enough to shave, handed me the logbook without a word and hurried back toward the barracks. The tower was just a raised platform with walls on 3 sides and windows looking out over the perimeter. A space heater buzzed in the corner, fighting a losing battle against the cold. I settled into the chair and opened the logbook. Standard entries, weather conditions, visibility, nothing unusual to report. Page after page off. Same thing. I made my first entry. 100 hours. Thompson on duty. All clear. The first hour passed quietly. I swept the searchlight along the fence line every 15 minutes, checking for what? Bears, moose. The briefing had mentioned wildlife, but the fence seemed overkill for animals. Around 1:30, something changed. The wind died completely, leaving an absolute silence that made my ears ring. No insects, no rustling leaves, nothing. Just the buzz of the heater and my own breathing. Then I heard it. Michael. I froze. The voice came from somewhere beyond the fence, maybe 50 yards into the trees. Female. Familial. Michael. Honey, is that you? My mother's voice. Impossible, but unmistakable. I stood up, moving to the window. The searchlight beam cut through the darkness, showing nothing but trees and shadows. Michael, please, I'm hurt. I don't know how I got here. My hand reached for the door handle, then stopped. The rules. The first one. Don't respond to voices calling from outside after dark. He pulled my hand back. Baby, please. It's so cold. I think I broke my ankle. I can't see the light, but I can't find the gate. Every word was perfect. The slight Minnesota accent, the way she called me baby, even though I'd asked her to stop when I turned 18. It was her. Except it couldn't be. Mom was in Minneapolis, probably asleep in her apartment. Shouldn't even know I was in Alaska. Michael, why won't you answer me? I'm scared. I held onto the edge of the desk, knuckles white. The voice was moving now, going around the fence line, always just out of sight, just beyond reach of the searchlight. I know you're there. I can see you in the tower. Please, just say something. Let 'em know you can hear me. My mouth opened. The words, I'm here on the tip, off me tongue. I bit them back, remembering Samuels's face. No exceptions, no questions. The voice continued for another hour, pleading, crying, begging. It knew things. The nickname she'd called me as a kid, the song she used to sing when I couldn't sleep. Details no one else could know. Around 03:00 hours, the tone changed. You're really not going to help me? Your own mother. The voice had an edge now. Anger creeping in. I raised you better than this. What kind of son leaves his mother toady in the cold? I kept silent, staring out at the darkness. My hands shook as I wrote in the log. 300 hours. Unusual auditory phenomena side perimeter. No visual contact. Fine. The voice was different now. Colder. But I'm not the only one out here. Michael, and the others aren't as patient as me. A laugh carried through the trees. Not my mother's warm chuckle, but something else. Something that made every hair on my arm stand up. It started low and built higher, multiplying until it sounded like a throats laughing in harmony. The sound circled the tower, growing closer, then farther, then closer again. I grabbed my rifle, checking that a round was chambered. Not that I knew what I'd be shooting at. The laughter continued until dawn, sometimes changing into words I couldn't quite make out, sometimes becoming screams or sobs or sounds that weren't quite human. When the first pale light touched the mountains, it stopped mid-laugh, cutting off like someone had thrown a switch. I sat there shaking, sweat soaking through my undershirt, even in the cold. Pfefferus looked normal now, just trees and shadows and morning mist. Birds started sink. The wind picked up again. At 600 hours, Jose appeared to relieve me. He took one look at my face and nodded. First rule. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Yeah, that one usually comes first. He poured coffee from a thermos and handed me the cup. Gets easier. Not better, but easier. What was it? My voice came out rough. Don't know. Don't want to know. Just follow the rules and you'll make it through your 6 months. I handed him the book and went back to the barracks on unsteady legs. In my room, I pulled out the list of rules and read them again. This time, I read them differently. Not as a joke or his English rule, but as warnings, survival instructions. I memorized every word. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the fence to stop feeling like protection and start feeling like the only thing between me and whatever lived in those woods. I'd gotten used to the routine faster than I'd expected. Wake at 1400, eat in the mess hall, while the day shift guys grab dinner. Equipment checks at 1600. Then either tower duty or perimeter patrol until 0600. The schedule kept us moving, kept us from thinking too much about what we'd heard in the dark. That night I had perimeter patrol, walking the fence line, checking for breaches, making sure all the gates were secure. October had gotten cold, dropping temperature another 10 since my arrival. My breath came out in clouds as I walked, boots crunching on the frozen ground. I was halfway through my second circuit when I saw him. He came stumbling out of the tree line, about 30 yards from the main gate, moving like every step hurt. Even from a distance, I could see his clothes were torn, jeans ripped at the knees, flannel shirt hanging opened in the cold. He stumbled forward, one hand pressed against his ribs, the other waving when he spotted him. Heo. Thank God. Heo's voice carried across the distance, hoarsely around, desperate. Please, I need help. I stopped walking, hand moving instinctively to my rifle, not pointing it at him, just ready. He kept coming, stumbling through the rough ground between the forest and the fence. As he got closer, I could see more details: blood on his shirt, dirt caked on his face, a cut on his forehead that had balled down into his right eye. He collapsed against the gate, fingers wrapping around the chain link. Please, you got to let me in. I've been lost for 3 days. My friends and I were camping Gand. I got separated. I think there was a bear or something. I'd been walking forever trying to find help. His story made sense. We were remote, but not impossibly so. Civilian hikers occasionally passed through the area, though they usually stuck to the muck. Further south, still, people got lost. It happened. I moved closer, keeping about 6 feet between us. Up close, he looked even worse. Lips cracked and bleeding, probably from dehydration. The blood on his shirt had that rusty color that meant it wasn't fresh. His hands shook where they gripped the fence. Where's your gear? I asked. Dropped it. I don't know. Maybe yesterday. It was slowing me down and I had to keep moving. Something was following me. He pressed his forehead against the fence, closing his eyes. Look, I know this is probably some kind of military thing, but I'm hurt bad. I think my ribs are broken. Please. I reached for my radio, then hesitated. Something. About him? No. That was just paranoia talking. The guy was clearly in bad shape. He needed medical attention, food, water. Basic human decency demanded that I help him. My hand moved to the gate's lock mechanism. Rule 2. The thought, stop it cold. Do not allow anyone inside the perimeter who arrives on foot. No exceptions. My hand pulled back. I'll radio for help, I said. Get a medical evac out here for you. What? No, just open the gate. He rattled the fence, desperation creeping into his voice. I'm right here. Just let me in, and then cow over. You need to call. I'm freezing. I can't do that. But I can get help here within an hour, maybe less. An hour? His voice cracked. I could be dead in Anhar. What the hell is wrong with you? I unclipped my radio, keeping my eyes on him. Base. This is Thompson on perimeter. I need the change happen so fast. I almost missed it. His face moved. The bones beneath the skin seemed tomove, stretching like someone was pulling putty. His jaw pushed forward, teeth growing and getting sharp. The fingers wrapped around the fence got longer, the nails turning dark and curving into claws. His eyes, Jesus' eyes turned yellow and split horizontally like a goat's. He snarled, the sound nothing human throats could make, and yanked on the fence hard enough to make the whole section shake. The metal groaned, but held. Those impossible hands reached through the gaps, swiping at me. I stumbled backward, radio falling from my hand. Let me in. The voice was still partially his, but layered now with other tones, deeper, hungrier. I'm so tired of waiting, so tired of asking nicely. The thing that had been a man pressed its twisted face against the fence, tongue too long, too purple, hanging out between the gaps. It pulled at the chain link with impossible strength, and I heard metal starting to rip. I took my rifle off my shoulder, backing up another step. Stop or I'll shoot. It laughed. They sound like grinding glass. Yes. Make noise. Bring the others running. They'll have to open the gate then, won't they? To help their friend. The logic of it hit me cold. If I raised an alarm, the other guys would come. They'd see what looked like a wounded civilian at our gate. In the confusion, in Thadok, would they remember the rule? Or would basic training kick in? Helps to ask questions later. The creature seemed to read my hesitation. It pulled harder at the fence, and I heard a support post groan. And a thermonude, and it might actually break through the barrier. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The thing let go of the fence and stepped back, its ugly features already beginning to change. Back, toward human with insecons. It looked like the injured hiker again, though something in its eyes remained wrong. Smart boy. It said, voice normal, but somehow worse. Forage you're learning, but you can't watch every gate, every night, and winter's coming. The cold makes us so much hungrier. It turned and walked back toward the forest. Not stumbling now, but moving with purposeful steps. Just before it reached the tree-eye, it looked back over its shoulder. Tell the sergeant his fence won't hold forever. Tell him we remember every face that's ever denied us entry. Then it was gone, swallowed by darkness between the trees. I stood there for a long time, rifle still half-raised, watching the spot where it had disappeared. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Finally, I picked up my radio and continued my patrol, checking every inch off fence where the thing had pulled. The metal was stretched in places, and one support post had a hairline crack running through it. I reported the damage, but not the encounter. What would I write? Civilian attempted entry revealed himself to be monster, threatened future attacks. They'd send me for a caval. The next week passed and a blur off routing. I threw myself into work, maintenance, inventory, anything to keep busy. Sleep came harder now. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face changing, those hands reaching through the fence. But the rules had saved me. Following them even when every instinct screamed. 2 had kept that thing outside, where it belonged. I was checking the equipment shed during an afternoon change when I heard the barking. A German shepherd sat just outside the fence, tail wagging, tongue hanging out in what looked like a friendly smile. It was a beautiful animal, thick coat, alert. Is the kind of dog you'd see on a police canine unit recruitment poster. I ignored it and went back to counting ammunition boxes. The barking continued, broken up by small whines. After a few minutes, I made the mistake of looking through the window. The dog had moved closer to the fence, sitting in that perfect way trained dogs do. It tilted its head when it saw me looking, tail wagging harder. Hey there, soldier. I nearly dropped the clipboard. The voice came from the dog, clear as day, though its mouth hadn't moved like you'd expect. The words just came from it somehow. I know this is strange, the dog continued, but I really need some help. I'm lost. My owner was camping and I got separated chasing a rabbit. Stupid Igno. But I've been out here for days and I'm so hungry. I turned back to my inventory, hands gripping the clipboard tight. Rule 3. If you encounter a dog that speaks, do not acknowledge it. Continue with your duties. I can see you in there, the dog said. Igno, you can hear me. Look, I get it. Talking dog. Pretty weird, right? Beautium, not some monster. I'm just a pet who got dealt a strange hand. Genetis experiment gone wrong if you want the truth. My owner worked for a lab in Anchorage. Please, just some food, maybe some water. The voice was so reasonable, so genuinely pitiful. It had that quality dog's eyes get when they're begging for table scraps, but in audio form. Every word tugged at that basic human instinct to help animals in need. I forced myself to count boxes. 12 quesos, 5.56. 8 cases of 9mm. I made tick marks in the form. You're scared. I understand this place. It's not normal, is it? I've seen things out here. Horrible things. They hunt at night. You know, Tikthuik the Lost. I've been hiding, but I can't keep running. Just let me in. Yield good. I can help watch for them. Dogs hear things humans can't. 6 cases off plus 4 cases of please. The voice broke, actually broke, like it was crying. I'm so tired of being alone, other. Do you know what it's like having thoughts? Being able to speak, but no one will listen? My owner probably thinks I'm dead. I just want to go home. I finish, counting the ammunition and move to the medical supplies. The dog kept talking, its voice following me as I moved around the shed. Sumatsa mesping, sometimes just chatting like we were old friends. It told me about its owner, Sarah, a geneticist, who'd loved hiking, about its favorite toys, about how it missed sleeping on a real bed instead of cold ground. Every word was perfectly made to make me want to help, to make me forget that dogs, even genetically changed ones, didn't just develop human speech. That this way is exactly what the rule warned against. After 20 minutes, the tone changed. You're really not going to help me, are you? The friendly quality drained away. That's cold, man. Really cold. What kind of person ignores a talking dog? Do you know how special I am? How valuable? Sarah would pay thousands to get me back. Hell, any scientist would. But no, you're just going to let me starve out here because of some stupid rule. I finished my inventory and headed forth door. The dog was pacing now back and forth along the fence line. Fine, bet that way. But you're making a mistake. I could have been an ally. Could have warned you about what's coming, because Ethies are coming. You know, the things that pretend to be people. They're just scouts, testing your defenses. The real hunters, they're so much worse. I walked past without looking at it, heading back toward the main building. The dog followed on the other side of the fence, keeping pace. You think that fence will protect you? You think those rules mean anything to the old ones? They're amused be. You're playing your little games, following your little lists. But when winter truly comes, when the sun bearer lyrises, that's when they feast. The dog stopped at the corner of Thiefen's line, unable to follow further. As I reached the building door, it called out one last time. Hey, soldier, when you hear them crying in the walls, remember I could have helped. I would have been a good dog. I went inside and closed the door firmly behind me. Through the window, I could see the dog sitting at the fence corner, watching Thief. After a few minutes, it stood, shook itself like a normal dog would, and trotted back into the forest. That night in the mess hall, I sat across from Jose while we picked at reconstituted eggs. He took one look at me face and raised an eyebrow. Which rule today? 3. He nodded slowly. That egg. Yeah, that one's rough. Sounds so real, doesn't it? So normal. Except for the obvious part. What are they? I asked quietly. These things. What do they want? Jose pushed his eggs around his plate. Does it matter? They're outside. We're inside. The rules keep it that way. That's all we need to know. But I could see in his eyes that he'd asked the same questions. That he'd lain awake wondering what kind of world we lived in. Where creatures wore human faces and dogs spoke with human voices. Where mothers' voices called from the darkness, and things that looked like injured hikers pulled at our fences with inhuman strength. We finished our meal in silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. Maybe a wolf, maybe not. I didn't want to know anymore. I just wanted to make it through my 6 months with my sanity intact. I couldn't stop checking the locks. After the dog, after that thing pretending to be someone's lost pet, I developed a routine that bordered on ritual. Door handle 3 times before bed. Deadbolt twice, then once more for good measure. Jose had caught me at it a few nights back and just nodded, understanding with it me having to explain. We all had our ways of coping. The paranoia crept in slowly. During my shifts, I'd find myself counting the rules in my head, matching each number to my fingers, like a kid learning arithmetic. 1. Don't respond to voices. 2. No one on foot gets in. 3. Ignore talking animals. 4. Lock your door before midnight. 5. Don't investigate screams. Simple, clear, life-saving. I started carrying a notebook, jotting down anything unusual, not for official reports, but for myself. Patterns in the sounds outside. Times when the temperature dropped without explanation. Which sections of fence showed the most wear. Maybe if I understood the logic, I could predict what came next. Maybe knowledge would make it less scary. It didn't. 3 days after the dog, Sergeant Samuels assigned me to deep maintenance on the equipment shed. Every piece of gear needed inspection, cleaning, and cataloging before the real winter hit. It spanned 14 hours straight, taking apart generators, checking fuel lines, and testing backup batteries. My hands turned black with grease, and my back hurt from hunching over machinery. Martinez brought me coffee around hour 10. You look like hell, Mike. Feel worse. I wiped sweat from my forehead, leaving Ganeth or grease streak. How many of these ancient generators do we have? Too many. But they're the only things that keep the lights on when the main power fails. He leaned against the workbench. And trust me, you don't want to be here in the dark. By the time I finished, my brain felt like mush. Every joint OCD, my eyes burned from the fluorescent lights and diesel fumes. I stumbled back to my quarters sometime after 2,200 hours. So tired I could barely keep my feet moving in the right direction. My room looked like heaven. Just that narrow bed with its thin mattress and scratchy wool blanket. I kicked off my boots, not bothering to line them up properly like usual. Peeled off the grease-stained uniform and let it fall wherever. The pillow felt cool against my cheek as I collapsed face first on Toth's bed. Slip grabbed me before I could form another thought. The cold woke me on not the normal chill of an Alaskan night, but something deeper. The kind of cold that comes from opening a freezer that hasn't been defrosted in years. My breath misted in the air, and I could feel ice crystals forming on the wool blanket. I opened my eyes to darkness. The LED display on my alarm clock read 12:17 a.m. Something moved in the corner of my vision. My body went rigid, that primitive part of the brain screaming danger, before the conscious mind caught up. Slowly, fighting every instinct that mended, I closed my eyes and pretend to still be asleep. I turned my head. It stood beside my desk, perfectly still. The shape had to duck slightly to fit in me native tea room. Maybe 7 feet tall, with limbs that seemed stretched like taffy, pale skin, so white it almost shined in the darkness. Its fingers hung down past where its knees should be, each one ending in joints that bent in too many places. But the face, where eyes should have been, there was only smooth skin, not scarred or sewn shut. Just a continuous plane of pale flesh, from forehead to cheekbones. Its mouth was a thin line, barely visible until it opened to speak. "You forgot." The whisper filled the room, even though it was softer than breathing. Each word seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls, the ceiling. Inside my own skull, I couldn't move. My muscles had locked up completely. Fight or flight turned into freeze. The thing tilted its head, studying me with whatever senses it used instead of sight. Rule 4, it continued in thunderable whisper. Such a simple thing. Turn a handle, slide a bolt. But you're tired. So very tired. So very tired. I took a step closer and I heard my floorboards creak in protest. Those impossible fingers traced along the edge of my desk, leaving trails of frost on the metal surface. Do you know what usually happens when someone forgets? The head tilted the other way. Owl-like. Would you like me to tell you? But no sound came out. The creature began to circle my bed with slow, careful steps. Each footful made no sound, even though it was so big. First, they take the small things. Memories of childhood, the taste of your mother's cooking, the name of your first dog. It paused at the foot of my bed. You don't notice at first. The mind fills in the gaps, creates explanations. Stress, they say fatigue. It continued its circuit. Now on the other side, I could smell it like a library basement, flooded and left to rot. Then come the faces. Your sister becomes a stranger. Your best friend's features shift when you're not looking. You know something is wrong, but the words to explain it dissolve before they reach your tongue. Those elongated fingers brushed against me footlocker, leaving frost patterns on the black plastic. The doctors call it Capgras syndrome. They give you pills that don't work. The creature completed its circle, stopping again beside the desk. In the darkness, its pale form seemed to pulse with its sound-sick light. Finally, when you're hollowed out, when everything that Mado human has been carved away, that's when they use you. A shell that walks and talks, but serves their purpose. And no one notices because you still look the same on the outside. It leaned down, bringing that eyeless face closer to mine. The cold, intensified until my teeth chattered. But I'm not like them. I remember when this place was trees and snow and nothing else before your kind built fences and wrote rules. The whisper took on an almost wistful quality. I'm curious about you, about why you follow the rules so carefully, except tonight. My voice finally worked, coming out as a croak. I was tired. I just spoke her. Yes, it straightened, head nearly touching my ceiling. Exhaustion, such a human weakness, but also perhaps a blessing. The others, the hungry ones, they would already be wearing your memories like stolen clothes. I merely wanted to see what? Fear. That thin mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. Pure, honest fear. It's been so long since I felt it. Myself. I wanted to remember. The creature moved back toward the corner of my room. Those long limbs folding and adjusting in ways that hurt to watch. Lock your door. Michael Thompson. Every night without fail, the next visitor might not share my nostalgia. It stepped backward, into the wall. Not through a doorway or window, but through the solid surface, like it was made of mist. The drywall showed no sign of its passage. The frost on my desk and footlocker remained for a few seconds before turning into vapor. The room temperature went back to normal so suddenly that my skin tingled. I sat there in the dark, blanket pulled up to my chin like a child hiding from monsters. Except the monsters here didn't live under beds. They walked through walls and spoke in whispers and remembered a Wentworld was different. My alarm clock read 12:34 a.m., 17 minutes. The encounter had lasted 17 minutes that felt like hours. Moving like an old man, I got up and walked to the door. My hand shook as I turned the handle. Once, twice, 3 times. The deadbolt slid home with a solid thunk. I tested it again, putting my full weight against the door. Solid, secure, following thurls. I dragged my chair over and wedged it under the handle for good measure. Then I sat on my bed back against the wall and waited for dawn. Sleep was impossible. Every shadow could hide pale limbs. Every sound could be whispers. My notebook lay open on the desk, and I thought about writing down what had happened. But what words could capture the feeling of something very old and wrong, standing in your room, calmly discussing how your identity could be stolen piece by piece? When 0600 finally came and pale sunlight crept through my window, I dressed in yesterday's uniform and went to find coffee. My hand still shook, but less noticeably in the mess hall. A few day shift guys nodded, greeting normaltine, as if creatures didn't walk through walls in the night. I never forgot to lock my door again, not once in the remaining months. Even when exhaustion pulled at my eyelids and my body screamed for rest, I would stand at that door and perform my ritual. Handle 3 times, deadbolt twice, once more for good measure. The frost marks on my desk never fully went away. Sometimes I'd run my fingers over the faint patterns, wondering what would have happened if I'd broken a different rule. If I'd responded to my mother's voice that first night. If I'd opened the gate for the injured hiker. If I'd talked back to the talking dog. The creature had called my exhaustion absent. Said the others would have been worse. I believed it. In a place where mothers' voices called from the darkness, and dogs spoke with human words, I'd take 17 minutes of terror over whatever alternative existed. Rule 4 became my religion. Lock your door before midnight. Do not open it for any reason until dawn. Such a simple thing. Turn a handle, slide a bolt. But I never forgot again. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of checking locks, counting rules, and jumping at shadows. I'd started sleeping better, if 4 hours of restless tossing counted as sleep. The memory of that pale thing in my room had gone from sharp terror to a dull ache, like a bruise that only hurt when pressed. Some nights I even made it to morning without waking in a cold sweat. That night was different. The screaming ripped me from sleep. High, piercing, desperate. A woman's voice torn raw with panic. I rolled out of bed and hit the floor hard. Muscle memory from basic training taking over before my brain fully woke up. Help me. Oh God. Somebody help me. The voice bounced off the corridor wall, seeming to come from everywhere at once. East wing maybe, or the equipment shed. The acoustics in the prefab buildings made it impossible to tell. All I knew was that someone needed help. Now, I yanked on my boots, not bothering with socks, and grabbed my rifle from its mount. I chambered around my uniform shirt hung on the chair. No time. Just undershirt and tactical pants would Haveto do. Please, he's trying to kill me. Someone. Anyone. The voice cracked, on the last word, turning into sobs that made my skin crawl. I'd heard people in pain before during training, exercise and medical emergencies. This was different. This was the sound of someone who knew they were about toady. I hit the door at a run, rifled at low ready. The hallway went out in both directions, lit by those harsh fluorescents that never quite reached the corners. Empty. But the screaming continued, louder now that I was outside my room. Where is everyone? The woman's voice rose to a shriek that made my teeth ache. How was no one else responding? 12 soldiers on base, and I was the only one in the hallway. I started toward the east wing where the sound seemed strongest. A door opened. Me! I spun, rifle coming up automatically. Mike, stop. Jose stood in his doorway wearing boxers and a faded Marines t-shirt. His hair stuck up at odd angles, but his eyes were alert, focused. He held his own weapon loosely at his side. Someone's in trouble, I said. The words came out harsher than intended. We need to know. He stepped into the hallway, blocking my path. We don't help me. Please. He's coming. The scrims bounced between us. Jose didn't even flinch. Just stood. They're like wooer, discussing the weather while someone died nearby. Get out of my way. I tried to step around him. He moved with me, still blocking. Jose, I'm serious. Samia needs Rule 5. His voice cut through another wail. When you hear screaming in the night, do not investigate. I don't care about the _rules right now. But even as I said it, my hands tightened on the rifle. The rules, always the rules. They'd saved me from my mother's voice, from the thing at the gate, from the talking dog. But this was different. This was human, real, happening, right now, while we stew-dogging in our underwear. Get away from me. No, no. Something crashed. Glass breaking. Furniture turning over. The woman's screams took on a different quality. Wet, gurgling, like she was choking on something. I pushed past Jose or tried to... For a skinny guy, he was stronger than he looked. He grabbed my shoulder and shoved me backward, then planted himself right in the center of the hallway. You go out there, you don't come back. No anger in his voice, just fact. Trust me, how can you just stand there? My voice cracked. I sounded young, scared, exactly what I was. She's dying. She's not dying. Jose lowered his weapon completely. It hung from its sling. Come my room now. I'm not going to Mike. He used the same tone Samuels had that first day. The one that piqued no argument. My room now. The screaming changed again. Multiplayer voices now making sounds that made my stomach turn. The original woman's voice laid over itself, creating a chorus of pain that seemed to push against my eardrums. From inside, I led Jose Gaidim to his quarters. He closed the door behind us and turned the lock, handled twice, deadbolt once. His room was identical to mine except for the personal touches. Photos taped to the wall, a cross hanging above the bed, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the desk. Sit. He pointed to the desk chair. I remained standing, rifle still clutched in both hands. He shrugged and sat on his bed, weapon across his lap. First time. First time what? The screaming continued outside. Muffled no, but still audible. Still horrible hearing them. The screamers. He rubbed his face with both hands. Usually happens. Around month 2, you're right on schedule. Somebody, anybody, please. I flinched. Jose didn't. He'd heard this before, many times, judging by his complete lack of reaction. 2 years, he said quietly. I've been here 2 years. Heard them maybe 30 times, 40, lost count after a while. And you've never once. The word hung between us. My 3rd week, just like you. Heard someone screaming, grabbed my weapon, went to help, made it halfway to the equipment shed before Corporal Davies tackled me, dragged me back inside, saved my life. The screaming outside changed position. Now it seemed to come from directly above us, though I knew the roof was empty. No way up there without a ladder, and the access hatch was locked. From inside, Davies rotated out. 4 months later, Jose continued, but not before he told him about the ones who didn't listen. Private Morrison, 6 months before I arrived, heard screaming from the mess hall, went to investigate. They found his rifle in the morning, safety off, full magazine, no blood, no signs of just gone. Maybe he deserted. The words sounded hollow even to me. In Alaska in winter with no vehicle. Jose shook his head. Then there was Specialist Chun, 1.5 years ago. Same thing, screaming from the perimeter. He radioed that he was going to check it out. That was the last anyone heard. Search parties found his boot prints in the snow heading toward the fence. They stopped about 20 feet from the tree. Just stopped like Hivanish mid-stet. The woman's voice rose to an impossible pitch, then split into 3 different screams. Each one came from a different direction, above, below, and somewhere to the east. Samo voice, same pain, impossible geometry. Who's doing this to me? I set my rifle down and held onto the edge of Jose's desk. My knuckles went white. Every instinct told me to help, to do something, anything. But Jose's words kept me in place. Morrison Chun, gone. How long does it last? Hour. Sumatimistu. He reached for the whiskey bottle. Want some? I shook my head. The screaming continued. Rhythmic now. In and out, building and fading. A woman sobbing, begging, then shrieking in pain over and over. Why doesn't anyone else come out? I asked. Why aren't they? They know the rule. Jose took a swig directly from the bottle. Been here long enough to know what happens. Probably lying in their beds right now, pillows over their heads, waiting for it to stop. Help me, help me, help me, help me. The words ran together into one long wail. I wanted to cover my ears, but that felt like giving up. I was starting to understand that there was no whoever, just another thing wearing a human voice. Talk to me. I said about anything, Justic. Jose nodded. My sister's getting married next month. December wedding. Crazy. Right. Who gets married? In December. But she says the church looks beautiful with all the Christmas decorations, and he kept going, telling me about venues and catering and dress shopping. Normal things, human things, anchors to reality while the impossible happened outside. The screaming changed. Multiple voices became a dozen, then more. All the same woman but different ages. Child version, screaming for mummy. Teenage version, begging for help. Elderly version, croaking please. A lifetime of phone person's pain compressed into simultaneous sound. I held the desk harder. Jose kept talking about his sister's wedding, the DJ she'd hired, the color of the bridesmaids' dresses. His voice steady and calm, like we were back in the mess hall instead of hiding from whatever hunted in our corridors. Then silence, not gradual, not fading. The screaming cut off mid-wail, leaving only the buzz of the heating system and our own breathing. I checked my watch. 0147. We'd been in Jose's room for 53 minutes. Is it over? Wait. Jose held up a hand. Sometimes they a single scream directly outside his door. So close I could hear the intake of breath before it. The rock knob rattled. Why? Won't you help me? The woman's voice broken. I can hear you in there. Two of you armed. Strong. Why won't you help me? Neither of us moved. The knob rattled again, more violently. Fine. The voice changed, became something else. Deeper, angrier. Fine. Let me die. But I won't be the last. I won't even be the worst. Footsteps in the hallway. Not walking. Wet slapping. Sounds like raw meat against linoleum. They moved away, getting quieter. After 5 minutes of silence, Jose finally relaxed. Now it's over. I stood on shaking legs. My rifle felt heavier than it should. As I picked it up, every soldier who investigated gone. He capped the whiskey bottle. Nobody's. No explanation. Just gone. The brass nose has to know. But what are they going to do? Close the base. Admit that something up here takes people who break the rules. So, we just let them scream. We followed rules. Jose stood, checking his weapon automatically. That's how we kite home. That's the only way. I moved toward the door, then stopped. The woman, the voice. Is it always the same? No. He shook his head. Sometimes male, sometimes children. Once I heard my mother. Perfect match down to her accent screaming that someone was hurting her. That was a bad night. I understood if that thing had used my mother's voice again, screaming instead of calling. Thanks, I said, for stopping me. Pass it on. Jose unlocked his door. Deadbolt's handled twice. Reverse order. When the next new guy comes, you stop. That's how it works. I stepped into the hallway. Everything looked normal. No blood, no signs of struggle, no evidence that someone had been screaming for their life just minutes ago. But there was a smell, faint, already going away, like copper and ozone and something else. Something organic and wrong. Mike had turned back. Jose stood in his doorway, looking older than his 29 years. Check your locks, he said. Every night, no exceptions. And if you hear screaming again, and you will, just remember, whatever's making those sounds, it's not human. Never was. The ones who forget that are the ones who didn't make it home. I nodded and went back to my room. 3 more months. 3 more months of rules and monsters and things that screamed with human voices. But I'd make it. I'd follow every rule, no matter how much my instincts fought back. No matter who's in to need help, because Jose was right. The only way to make it home. Wasto remembered that nothing here was what it seemed. That mercy and compassion could get you killed. That sometimes the most human thing you could do was nothing at all. I locked my door, handled 3 times, deadbolt twice, once more for good measure, and sat on my bed with me rifle across my lap. Sleep wasn't coming back tonight. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, and every gust sounded like someone calling for help. 3 more months. 3 months shot past in a blur of routine and vigilance. Every rule followed. Every net survived. I folded my last uniform and placed it in my duffel bag. The movement's automatic after years of military service. My quarters looked exactly as they had 6 months ago. Bare walls, standard issue furniture, that single window overlooking the fence and the forest beyond. Only the faint frost marks on my desk, and the worn groove in the floorboards where I'd checked the door lock each night showed I'd ever been here at all. The transport was due in 2 hours. 2 hours until I could leave this place behind and pretend. It had been just another deployment, just another assignment completed. I heard boots in the hallway, eager, Quick steps that only new arrivals made. Everyone else had learned to move carefully here, saving energy for when it mattered. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Specialist Thompson. The voice was young, energetic. "I'm Private Brandon Kelly. Sergeant Samuel said you'd be showing me around before you ship out." I opened the door to find a kid who looked fresh out of basic. Bright green eyes. Uniform so new it still had creases from the package. Boots, polished to a mirror shine. Hess stood at parade rest like he was waiting for inspection. "Just Mike is fine." I stepped aside to let him in. "You can drop the formalities." Brendan relaxed slightly, but kept that eager energy as he entered my quarters. His look swept the room, taking in the sparse details. Man, they weren't kidding about remote helicopter riding was insane. Nothing but mountains and trees for hundreds of miles. Yeah, I pulled out my notebook, the one where I'd tracked patterns, recorded observations, tried to make sense of the impossible. The pages were filled with notes about temperature drops, strange sounds, fence damage that repaired itself by morning. None of it would help him. Experience was the only teacher here. I flipped to a blank pageant, started writing. The rules came easily now, burned into my memory. Through repetition and necessity. 1. Do not respond to any voice calling to you from outside the fence after dark, no matter who they claim to be. Brandon watched over my shoulder, curiosity clear on his face. "What's that?" "Standing orders for guard duty and general conduct." I kept writing, making sure each word was clear. No room for misinterpretation. 2. Do not allow anyone inside the perimeter who arrives on foot. No exceptions, regardless of their condition or claimed identity. Guard duty protocols. Brandon leaned closer. Seems pretty standard for a secure facility. I continued writing without responding. 3. If you encounter a dog or any other animal that speaks to you, do not acknowledge it. Continue your duties as normal. Brandon laughed. Bright, genuine order. That bounced off the walls. "Okay, now I know you're messing with me. Talking dogs. What is this? Some kind of FNG hazing?" I finished the last twirls in silence. 4. Lock your door before midnight every night. Do not open it for any reason until dawn. 5. If you hear screaming in the night, do not investigate. Radio for backup and remain at your post. I tore a page from my notebook and handed it to Brandon. He took it with that same amused expression, looking over the list like it was a joke he didn't quite get yet. "Come on, man. Talking animals. Voices in the dark." He folded the paper and tucked it into his chest pocket with casual disregard. "I get it. New guy pays his dues. But between you and me, what's this place really like?" I wanted to grab him by the shoulders, to make him understand that every word on that paper could save his life. That I'd heard my dead mother's voice calling from the darkness, that I'd watched a man's face split and reshape into something inhuman. That I'd spent a night paralyzed, while an eyeless thing circled my bed, discussing how my identity could be hollowed out and worn like clothing. Instead, I zipped my duffel bag closed. "Follow the rules. That's all you need, talk no, right?" Brandon's smile widened, clearly thinking he was in on the joke. "No. Follow the rules. Got it." I shouldered my bag and took one last look around the room. 6 months of my life reduced to bare walls and standard furniture. 6 months of learning the Thua world contained things that shouldn't exist, that wore known faces and spoke with loved ones' voices. Brandon followed me out, still chattering about his training, his hometown, his excitement about the assignment. The same eager energy I'd had when I stepped off that helicopter in October, before I knew what waited in the dark, before I understood why Sergeant Samuels had that 1,000-yard stare. We walked to the landing pad. Brandon, asking questions about shift rotations, equipment maintenance, food quality, normal concerns for a normal ASIC man. I gave him basic answers, enough to satisfy without revealing the truth. He'd learned soon enough. First night on tower duty, probably when the wind died and a voice called his name from beyond the fence. The helicopter appeared over the tree line. Reuters beating against the cold air. I'd never been so glad to hear that sound. "Any advice?" Brandon asked as we waited for it to land. "You know, veteranto rookie." I looked at him. Really looked. Saw myself 6 months ago. Confident and skeptical. Certain that my training had prepared me for anything. No words would get through that certainty. He'd have to learn the way we all did. "Lock your door," I said finally. "Every night, no matter how tired you are." He laughed again, but something in me expression must have gotten through, because the sound faltered at the end. "That's really important. To you guys, huh? The whole rules thing. You have no idea." The helicopter touched down and the crew chief waved me forward. I climbed aboard without looking back, settling into the webbed seat as the rotor spun up. Through the window, I watched Brandon shield his foss from the rotor wash, already turning back toward the buildings, toward his new home for the next 6 months. The outpost shrank below us as we gained altitude. 12 prefab buildings inside a fence that couldn't keep out the things that really mattered. Radio towers reaching toward the sky, and beatened the perimeter. Endless wilderness where old things waited. I understood now why deployments were only 6 months, why communication with the outside was, why reports never mentioned the real dangers. Some truths couldn't be processed remotely, filed in triplicate, and analyzed by people who'd never heard their mother's voice, calling from empty forest. Some knowledge came with a price that couldn't be measured in dollars or an hour. The helicopter banked south, carrying me back to a world where dogs didn't speak, and injured hikers were actually injured hikers, where locks were about property theft, not survival, where screaming in the night meant someone needed help. Brandon would face his first test soon, maybe tonight, maybe in a week. He'd hear something impossible and have to choose between his training and those 5 Part of me hoped he'd remember our conversation, that some instinct would make him pause before opening that door, or answering that voice. But I knew better. He'd do exactly what I'd done. Question, doubt, nearly die. Learning that the rules weren't suggestions or hazing or tradition. They were the only thing standing between us and whatever waited in the dark. The outpost disappeared behind us, swallowed by mountains and distance. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about Brandon alone on tower duty. Searchlight sweeping the fence line when the wind suddenly stopped and a known voice called his name. He had the rules. That would have to be enough. The helicopter carried me south over endless wilderness, back toward cities and crowds and normal human problems. But I knew I'd never really leave that place behind. Every time I locked a door, I'd check it 3 times. Every time I heard a dog bark, I'd wait for words. Every scream in the night would make me freeze, counting to 5, remembering some deployments. He came back from unchanged. Others left marks that didn't show on medical evaluations or psychological profiles. Scars on the inside where nobody could see them but you. 6 months at the outpost had taught me that the world was stranger and more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. That survival sometimes meant ignoring every human instinct. That there were things in the dark that knew our names and wore our memorials like masks. Brandon would learn all of this, or he wouldn't, and they'd send antitheraplasment in 6 months to receive a handwritten list of rules from Jose or whoever else survived. The cycle would continue. It had to back us somewhere in those mountains. Beyond the fence and the rules and the illusion of safety, things waited for Simonian to forget to lock their door.